Thank you for the opportunity for Reformed Baptist Mission Services located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, to bring this short video presentation to you. As our slogan says, we exist serving churches, serving Christ. And Reformed Baptist Mission Services is a fellowship of 37 member churches at present who hold many things in common, especially our love for the doctrines of grace and Reformed Baptist doctrine as expressed in the 1689 Confession of Faith. But we exist as an instrument to assist one another in the spread of the gospel throughout the world. Our primary focus is on helping missionaries and national pastors. In North America, we assist the Perons in French-speaking Quebec, in the Caribbean, the Bloises in Kingston, Jamaica, and in South America, the Lines, who labor in Bogota, Colombia. Europe is the location for the Worths in Scotland and the Vaughns in France. The Middle East has the Maozes in Israel and the Blossers in Bahrain. And finally, on the African continent, the Underhill family in Nairobi, Kenya. But this presentation concerns special projects. They were begun 10 years ago when it was believed by our administrative council that our churches needed a challenge at that year because there weren't any new missionaries coming forward to be sent out. And that's how our projects began. They have been many different kinds of projects over the years, totaling thousands of dollars. For instance, we have on different occasions provided funding for national pastors to attend 4 different pastors' conferences in different countries. We have had a special emphasis on the translation of our 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith, and to date we have provided it into 6 different language groups. In other areas of literature, there have been 8 different titles of books or booklets that have been translated, some of them having to do with aspects of Christian doctrine, one in a Christian biography, others for the specific purpose of evangelism, and yet another one was the provision of a Christian hymnal for churches. We have had some experience in providing funds for buildings, the first one being helping the Trinity Baptist Church of Nairobi, Kenya, with their building, and more recently, provision of funds to complete a Christian literature warehouse in the town of Pitch in Serbia, which serves the entire Balkan Peninsula. From that warehouse, many thousands of pieces of literature go forward in 5 different languages and 2 different alphabets to reach the many countries in that area of the world. In other words, by summing it up, we can say that RBMS special projects have reached into 12 different countries and 9 different language groups. For 1996, our special projects involve several different ones, not just one language and not just one country. So we're here to ask your attention for a few minutes as we explain them to you, leaving that challenge for you as churches to consider, to discuss, to pray, and then we trust to give sacrificially to see each of these projects completed before the end of 1996. I'm sure many of you will remember the special project we had in 1994, the last special project that we sponsored. After my visit to Serbia, to Pastor Simo Ralovic and his brother Chedo, our churches were very moved to help these brothers in different aspects of their work. Part of what we did, as I've just said, was to provide funding for the completion of a warehouse there in the town of Pech. I have with me tonight copies of the Serbian hymnal. This was a result of additional monies that were given after we had reached our goal for assisting them with the warehouse. Hymnals in Serbo-Croatian, one in the Latin alphabet, the other one in the Cyrillic alphabet. This year, our project for 1996, as I said, has different aspects to it. Central to it is the provision of funds for use in church buildings. Now, it's different from what we've done in the past, and we'll have a special explanation about that in just a moment. We also have the challenge of another translation of the 1689 Confession of Faith. The translation has already been done, and I'll give you more information about that too in just a minute. And lastly, something which is very significant, although it'll have a very small format, and that is providing a version of the Scriptures in an online edition that can be put onto diskette and into other electronic means for distribution throughout a very special part of the world. To get us started, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Ted Tripp, who's pastor of the sponsoring church for two of these projects. He's from Grace Fellowship Church in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and it is, by the way, as a result of that church's vision for this special project that this video presentation is being made possible for you. Dr. Tripp.
As our missions coordinator, Mr. Straub, just mentioned a moment ago, two of the elements of this special project have been sponsored by Grace Fellowship Church in Hazleton. Each of these projects involves a building fund established for a country that is economically deprived and where there is great work going on but a need for special financial assistance. The first one we will introduce tonight is in Belarus, in the Commonwealth of Independent States. Belarus was the westernmost border of the former USSR, and there in the city of Minsk, the provincial capital, there is a group of Reformed Baptists that are thriving and yet are in need of our help to establish a building for themselves. The other project is in Zambia, in South Central Africa. There again, an economically deprived area where great work is going on amongst Reformed Baptists, and we want to have a measure of involvement in helping them provide buildings in this very needy country. These are unique projects because rather than being just the provision of funds for a building, which would just be given and provide for a building in one occasion, these projects involve a substantial involvement on the part of the church so that we are providing a fund which the churches will borrow from and then will repay so that that money can be available to help other churches secure buildings at a later date. We have some criteria for these churches. They must be viable churches, churches that would survive and are strong and healthy, that would survive whether or not we are providing funding for them at this point for their buildings. They must be churches that hold the London Baptist 1689 Confession of Faith. And they must be churches that have already provided a substantial amount of the funding through their own sacrificial giving. In each case, a local committee will oversee the funds and provide diaconal services for the churches that use the funds, and the money will be repaid to a fund held in that country that can be used for future projects. Let's look at a couple of slides from both Belarus and Zambia to give you a feel for the countries where these projects will be taking place. It was my privilege to travel to the city of Minsk in Belarus in May of 1995. The city of Minsk was the western border and western entry point to the former USSR and is a very beautiful city. You can see the contrasting architecture here between the old pre-war style buildings and the buildings built after the war. In this city there is a dear brother who is a solid Reformed Baptist brother, Georgy Vyazovsky. Georgy grew up in the Communist Youth League in the former USSR. He was born in Siberia. Eventually his father was a military pilot. The family moved to Moscow where he got a hold of a Bible and started reading the New Testament, and through God's sovereign grace was brought to faith in Jesus Christ. So this man who was once part of the Communist Youth League became a Christian, went to the UK and studied at the Metropolitan Tabernacle Seminary, and has returned to Minsk to establish a Reformed Baptist church there in Minsk. Our brother preaches the Word of God in this church in the midst of a very crowded situation. They have a small flat with a room approximately 12 by 15. You can see from this shot taken during a Sunday school class that it's a very tiny room. They pack 35, 36, 38, nearly 40 people into this room for their Lord's Day services, and they're back again for a midweek prayer service and back again for a midweek Bible study. Certainly very devout and godly people who have been gathered together and who are committed to the Reformed faith. Here are some of the sisters standing outside the building talking. They have a flat which they purchased within this building, but their space, as you have seen, is quite crowded, and they have a very great need for a new building. This literature project really is special project is for $15,000 to help them to be able to sell this flat and add the money that would be provided by this fund to the money that they will obtain from selling their flat, and to secure a building in central Minsk. In fact, they have located a building which they would like to secure when the funds become available. Our brother Georgi is at work here in his computer in his bedroom. As you see, the books there piled on the bed, and great literature work is going forth from this little home office, and literature is being distributed throughout the UK. Just one report from Western Siberia that was received just today. This man writes, "I have received many Christian books, but the type of books you have sent I have never seen before. Many brethren who came from Omsk, the provincial capital, said that your books are very good. They took your address so that they can write to you. And now in our study, we read them aloud. Everyone wants to know what is in them. Thank you so very much." Much of the work with this literature project is being done by our brother Bob Carr, who is the pastor of a RBMS member church, Grace Baptist Church in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Great work of God is going on within this city in the former Soviet Union, and who knows how long the door will be open and the opportunity will be here to have this kind of involvement with these dear brothers and sisters. The other half of the project involves Zambia. In Zambia, there are a number of pastors, Reformed Baptist pastors. Here are some of them that were pictured when we were there in 1992 at the pastors' conference. There are some 9 solid Reformed Baptist churches committed to the 1689 confession, preaching the Word of God, young men who are committed to the Reformed faith, laboring in this very difficult place. The Kabwata Baptist Church, pastored by Conrad Mbewe in Lusaka, the capital city, is an example of the kind of work that is going on there in South Central Africa. They are currently renting this school building, which, as you will see in a moment, is in very bad repair, and they are in desperate need of a building of their own. Here you see footers that were dug there in Lusaka, and the location where they hope to build their building. You'll notice those footers have been dug by hand. The little piles of rock you see are as a result of men breaking up the rock with sledgehammers whenever they would locate a rock, and continuing the excavation project with picks and shovels. They do what they can. They build a little at a time, and then as they run out of funds, they wait until they are able to do more. This project involves a $30,000 fund, which would make money available for the Kabwata Baptist Church and for other churches there in Zambia that are in desperate need of buildings. You'll notice the ingenuity at work in this makeshift pulpit in the school. And while we know that these brothers and sisters have very little of this world's goods, those of us who heard our brother Conrad Mbewe preach the Word of God to us at our convention this past March know that they are being well provided for spiritually through the able ministry of our brother Conrad and many other men who are holding forth the Word of God there in this needy country. You get a sense here in this photo of the great physical need, of the deterioration of the building, and yet you see a large crowd gathered together to hear the Word of God. God is doing a great work in this country, and this project will enable us to facilitate that work and the furtherance of the gospel there in Africa.
Thank you, Pastor Ted, for that summary of the first two elements of our project for 1996, building funds for Minsk, Belarus, and for Zambia. While we have the slide projector going, let's take a look at the other two parts of this project. We said it involved the translation of the 1689 Confession of Faith. The last one that we did was in French, as you can see on the right, and this particular project now aims at the Indonesian language. Now, this is a very strategic part of the world. This request comes to us from Heritage Baptist Church in Crowley, Fort Worth, Texas, one of our member churches, and they have missionaries who are former members of their congregation there doing missionary work in Jakarta on that main island. There is 190 million plus people living in Indonesia, the fourth most populous country in the world. And the official language is the Indonesian language, amongst many others. The translation of this Confession of Faith was really done several years ago, and it has never been printed. They're just dealing with photocopies that are being passed around from one pastor or missionary to another. There are not a lot of established Reformed Baptist churches in that country, but we believe that the provision of the Confession of Faith will assist in that regard, and that is why we bring this challenge to you. It's going to take approximately $3,000 to take the translation, which has been done and has been field tested, and print that in the Indonesian language in a suitable quantity to make available to these missionaries and few national pastors who can use that with their teaching and training of believers. Then the last element to our 96 special project has to do in general with the Arab world, as this slide helps us to be oriented to the Arabian Gulf, to the Arabian Peninsula, and countries that are in that region. We talked about putting the Bible onto diskette. The Arabic Bible is available, obviously, in printed form, and some of it is available in one form or another, even on diskette for use with computers. Computers are widely used in that part of the world by the few Christians who are there, by Christian workers who are there, as our slide illustrates. But really, most of the Bible is distributed in a bound form, as we can see here. This project will involve developing some very technical software to put a voweled version of the Arabic Bible on diskette. And when it's done in a compacted form, it can be easily then distributed to individuals by just the use of 3.5-inch computer diskettes. Perhaps eventually it will be made available on a different basis through the use of the internet, but this is our goal. To do this, the equipment that is necessary, the hardware as well as software, it's going to cost $10,000. Part of it will be done in that region of the world, but there will be others who are perfectly fluent in Arabic, who are believers in other parts of the world, who will be networked together to complete this project. This will be a significant contribution to the evangelization of Arabic-speaking peoples in that region of the world. And this request is brought to us by Grace Baptist Church of Carlisle, Pennsylvania. In conclusion, let's summarize once more what we've just seen in the slides and what we gave you an overview of as we began. First of all, we have a new approach to helping believers, churches in other countries with their buildings, not outright gifts. We believe that it's necessary for them to bear responsibility for this, but we're making funds available to them, first of all in Belarus, in Minsk, that Reformed Baptist congregation, and then laterally for churches in Zambia, who will be able to use these funds, repay them into an account within their country to put to use again. That first part in Belarus is a total of $15,000 US dollars that are needed, and then in Zambia, $30,000. This will assist one church in each of those countries to make real progress in the acquisition of buildings for very needy congregations. And then we moved from those building fund projects to the seventh translation that we will fund of our 1689 Confession of Faith through the request from Heritage Baptist Church in Fort Worth, Texas, for the Indonesian language. That is done, and it's simply awaiting the funds to send all of that work to the printers and have a good quantity of them made available there. And last, but by no means least, a very significant contribution that Reformed Baptist churches in America can have to the evangelization of Arabic-speaking peoples all over the world, and that is to develop the software and to purchase the hardware that's necessary for this, to put the Arabic Bible, a voweled version of it, on diskette for easy distribution, for Bible study, for evangelization of many different peoples throughout that Arabic-speaking world. And that will cost us a good $10,000. That total comes just about to $60,000. So that is the goal that we're setting before our member churches and others who are interested to join with us. Those contributions should be sent to the RBMS office, Post Office Box 289, Carlisle, Pennsylvania 17013, and marked very clearly on there the 1996 Special Project. Through letters to member churches and through Missionary Update, you'll be getting reports as to how these funds are coming in as the requests come from these different brothers and countries, and as the monies are available, it will be put to use immediately. Now, $60,000 is a lot of money. If we were having a new missionary go out to a country this year, it probably wouldn't cost us anything like $60,000 to assist them in gathering their first one-time expenses and their outgoing costs to get to the mission field. It is a challenge for us, but that's what the Bible comes back to time and time again, and that's what missions is all about. It hasn't been all that many years, 1993, since we commemorated the first missionary endeavor in this modern missionary era, the going of William Carey to India. And what was that watchword that we reminded ourselves of to challenge us to further missionary efforts? Well, it was Carey's phrase based on the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verses 2 and 3, to expect great things from God and attempt great things for God. Do we really believe that God will bless these things? Are we expecting his blessing to come upon these small and struggling congregations in the Confederation of Independent States? Can we expect to see missionaries from Zambia going to other countries? Do we hope that God will bless in such a restricted access country as Indonesia to ground church after church, Bible study group, college students who are eagerly studying the Scriptures in the Reformed faith? Will they have the tools to do that with that excellent summary of the Confession of Faith that we enjoy so readily available to us in the English language? Do we expect that the Arab world, so resistant is Islam to the gospel and has been for centuries, that God can break through, that the Word of God can come to many and make it available to them in a format that they can receive and use? Well, if we are praying for conversions, for growth, for church planting, for national leaders in these countries, if we are praying and expecting that, then we must attempt to do great things for God as well. And that means looking at our budgets, looking at our giving. How much can we give? What can we sacrifice in one area so that this project can go forward? These brothers helped in a great way during 1996. That is the challenge that we put before you. We want to hear from you soon. If there are further questions that you have, any member of our Administrative Council of Reformed Baptist Mission Services would be more than happy to explain it to you. Or call the office in Carlisle at 717-249-7473. Let us all prayerfully remember this project and then ask God what he would have us give to see it completed. Thank you very much for the time that you've taken to visit with us and to learn more about this project. May God bless you.